Hi everybody, my name is Bill Keithler and I'm a candidate for Board of Education here in Hopewell Valley. I wanted to make a video to tell you how I'm thinking about these bond referendum questions. But first, just want to get a couple quick things out of the way. One, Hope and Amanda, the other two candidates for school board, are wonderful. They're smart, they're practical, they're involved in the community, and they'd be great board members. So the district is going to be well served regardless of the outcome of the election. And I feel very good about that. Second, I am simply a candidate. I'm not a member of the school board. I'm certainly not speaking on behalf of the board or anybody else. I'm just giving you my perspective on these bond questions. Third, my wife and I, we have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. For us, voting yes on the bonds is a no-brainer, right? We're a young family looking at 22 more years of schooling in the district. So our perspective is very different than somebody who's retired, whose kids have moved away from the district, or who maybe a young family that sends their kids to private schools. Whatever the case may be, I've been very proactive over the past couple of months, seeking out the perspectives of people with different circumstances. And I've met a lot of folks who are planning to vote yes on the bond. On both bond questions. I've met a lot of folks who are planning to vote no on both bond questions, and I've been seeking out these alternative perspectives, and even if I don't agree with where people have landed, I certainly appreciate their perspective and respect it. And again, I've thought it out, so I do value it. What I want to do though in this video is talk to the folks who are not in either of those groups, folks who haven't yet made up their mind about the referendum questions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my dad hat off. I'm going to take my school board candidate hat off for just a moment and imagine that I was somewhere else. I was in a different district or in a different state, and I was just looking at these questions objectively and kind of how I would frame it up. So we've got two questions, and I've got my trusty whiteboards here. Question one is improvements to our existing space, and there's significant state aid. So these are the buildings we already have, the classrooms we already have that need improvements. Question two is building new space, particularly at Bear Tavern and Tollgate, these elementary schools. I'm a dollars and cents guy, so I go straight to a chart like this. Question one has about $58.5 million of total price tag. But if we vote yes on question one, it unlocks almost $20 million of state aid. It's $19.9 million. So the net cost to taxpayers would be $38.5 million. Again, we get almost $60 million of improvements, and we pay just under $40 million because of that state aid. These are projects that we're going to do anyway. So the only question is how we pay for it, and really whether we get state aid. So that's question one. I think question one is a slam dunk. Question two, this is about those new buildings, or I should say that the new classroom and student space at Bear Tavern and Tollgate, and it's significant money. There's about $25.5 million here. There is a tiny bit of state aid, about $300,000, but it's immaterial for our purposes. So again, two different questions. The best question I've gotten, kind of the most frequent question I've gotten on question one is, Bill, why are we borrowing money to fix up existing space, right? Shouldn't we have a rainy day fund for leaking roofs? And I had the exact same question, right? So that's where I started, and I was thinking I had the same question. But then when I looked at it, I said, well, wait a second. This is the incentives that the state gives us. If we vote yes on question one, then we unlock almost $20 million of state aid. So I wound up coming all the way around on this to the perspective of, if the board had proposed funding $58 million of improvements out of pocket without doing a referendum, I'd be saying, hey guys, why aren't we doing a referendum to secure $20 million of state aid? So that was kind of my journey on question one. And I hope that makes sense. I have not met anybody who says we don't need to fix the leaking roofs, that we don't need the heating and air conditioner upgrades. So This is really needs, not wants. Question 2, that new space. The best argument I've heard against voting for question 2 came from one of my neighbors who said to me, Bill, I've been in the district a long time. I feel like I've seen this before, and I just don't think the enrollment growth is going to be that large. And I'm calling this scenario A, where over the next 2 decades, maybe slight growth in enrollment, but nothing significant. Now, I'm expecting B. I'm expecting more growth. But let me make my neighbor's argument first. If you think enrollment growth is going to be minimal, then the risk you'd be worried about is overbuilding. We build this new classroom space, and it turns out, the new kindergartners just don't show up, and we have space we don't need, but we still have to pay for it. That would be the risk of overbuilding. If we think the growth is coming, then, in my mind, the fiscally responsible thing to do is to build the classroom space we need and then pay for it, with a bond. I think that's a prudent way to approach it. And whether it's going to be minimal growth or significant growth, for me, that comes down to the new development in town. Regardless of what you think about it, it's coming, and the only question is who's going to move into these homes. If it's retirees, folks without school-age children, then enrollment growth will be pretty stable. If we're going to see new families with school-age children moving into town, and they're going to send their kids to the public schools, well, then we're looking at scenario B. For me, that's why I'm voting yes on question 2. I think we're going to have some significant enrollment growth that I'd like us to be prepared for. I have heard, and I have seen some pretty good analysis around, busing students around the district. So if we have spare capacity in one school, but we're tight, say in Bear Tavern, well, let's bus some students across the district to improve space utilization. Yes, absolutely, that always needs to be on the table. But what I'd say is that kind of plan really only works in scenario 1, because if we have huge enrollment growth, there just simply won't be the spare capacity in other parts of the district to absorb those extra students. But yeah, that's why I'm voting yes on 2, but I could also, like I said, I have a neighbor whose perspective I really value, voting no, and I get it. The final layer here is I've spoken to a number of folks who have frustrations other than what's explicitly asked in these bond referendum questions, and this can get very personal. Different people have different frustrations, but I've heard folks mention the school board and priorities, the curriculum, the administration, or even just the development in town. They don't like the amount or the location of development, and even if I don't share each of those frustrations, I hear it. I get it, and they're real frustrations. What I would say is, well, 2 things. One, you have been heard, right? Those frustrations were made clear last year, right? The bond failed last year. You have been heard, and we can see that in the design of the referendum. So first of all, some stuff was taken out. The turf fields gone, right? So some projects have been taken out of the referendum. And second, it's been restructured as a 2-question referendum so that you can vote yes on 1 and no on 2 if you're so inclined. The other thing I'd say is, if your frustrations are about anything other than specifically should we make these improvements on question 1 and secure state aid, or do we need new space in question 2? If you're frustrated about anything else, that's not solved by voting no on the referendum. I think the way that we work towards that is through dialogue and having conversations at the school board. And as a next step, I'd say, look, let's get a cup of coffee. All right, actually, I'm now putting my candidate hat back on. I'm no longer in Ohio looking at this from a distance. I'm a candidate now, but I'm saying, let's go to Burro Bean or Chubby's or meet over in Titusville. Let's get a cup of coffee. I want to hear what your frustrations are. I also want to hear what you love about the school, the school district that you wouldn't want to change, right? Those topics, we need to have dialogue. I would say you can vote yes on the bond questions without signaling that, you're satisfied with everything in the district. And I hope in the weeks and months and years to come that I get to meet more of you and have more of these conversations. And I look forward to, regardless of the outcome of the election, I look forward to continuing to, invest myself in the community and working together to keep this place special. So thank you and best wishes.